Okay, so let's stop talking, let's start listening. So Lily will, because she's the prepared one, will present our keynote speaker. I'm a huge fan of Angel. I have studied and learned from his, I have even, let's say, stole a little bit some of his stuff, maybe more, but you'll see. So Lily will present Angel in more
I will
prepared
present
way.
him, and I'm really excited as well. We met some years ago, and I was also really impressed by Angel. He has influenced our professional development for sure. As
A guru.
nice as it is, yeah. He is a global leader in Agile transformation. He has written Agile Management and Agile Kaizen, among other books. He is one of the top Management 3.0 trainers and founder of Improvement 21. He's not just transforming with frameworks, he's changing mindsets. That's why he influenced
Ours
us
as well.
so much. Exactly. He's a really nice person as well, and you will see that.
So, welcome.
He's always telling us, no, I haven't finished. He's always telling us to keep expectations low. You will see how modest he is, but believe me, it will be amazing. Angel will guide us through the real reason why Agile fails. It's the human resistance to change. We are all here because of that, right? To learn how to overcome that. Through the concept of culture hacks, he'll show us how small, intentional shifts can have a big impact. His talk will challenge how we view transformation and offer practical ways to make change stick. Get ready for insights that are as sharp as they are actionable. Let's give a warm welcome to Angel MEDINILLA.
Okay, sound, 1, 2, 1, 2. Mary had a little lamp. Can you hear me? Yeah. So, good morning, everyone. What are you doing here? Didn't you hear Agile is dead? I think that of course, Agile is well and alive, probably more needed than ever. I think that one of the reasons that we have been hearing this Agile is dead stuff over the last years is because there's many reasons, but one of them, I think, is the failed transformations. I've seen so many failed transformations, and in every single instance that I've been able to study, the reason was not that Agile wasn't working, or Agile wasn't needed, or Agile was wrong, or it was about the change. It was about how Agile was introduced in these organizations. I usually explain that there are two different sports. One sport is knowing about agility and getting certified and knowing about Scrum and Kanban and SAFe and LESS and user story points and learn about all that, okay? It's like learning about nutrition. You learn about diet and you learn about proteins and fat and carbohydrates and proteins. That's one sport. And then another sport is, how do I convince my partner to go on a diet? Well, that's another sport. And that's the risky one, okay? That's the one that can get you killed. And that's what I'm going to talk about, change management, a sport that I didn't realize existed for the first half of my career. And I was so frustrated, and I'm going to talk about that. And then when I realized that it was not all about knowing agility and Scrum and all that, you also had to understand how human organizations change, everything changed. Once I started realizing that there was another game, another sport being played, my results were way better. And I hope to give you some ideas on some of my learnings. In fact, I do have one training that is 3 days where we talk only about change management. So now I have 40 minutes. It's like trying to stuff the ocean inside a bucket. It's really difficult. So instead of trying to, rush over a lot of practices and tools and methods, I will give you some resources that you can use later, afterwards, to learn about those. I brought you 2 stories, which is an inspiring way to start a day, storytelling, narratives, and 5 learnings, 5 things that I have personally learned about change management, and I wish I had learned earlier. So I hope this will bring some usefulness to you. So yeah, thank you for the kind introduction. I've been doing this for 18 years. Before that, I was a project manager for another 10 years, which means I'm old as fuck. Gosh, I'm depressed now. I'm not just a trainer. I've been doing transformation with organizations in 3 continents, 12 time frames from America to Asia. And I've worked with small, medium, big enterprises in many, many different markets: banking, insurance, telco, video games, military, aerospace, pharma, medical, tourism, logistics. I don't know, you name it. You name it, probably I've been there, okay? But this is the boring stuff. You can link with me in LinkedIn using this QR code. And yeah, books, talks, you can find me online, whatever. First, I have a disclaimer. There is no Jedi mind trick that I'm going to teach you in this session. Aww. For those of you millennials and Gen Z, Star Wars was a thing before Marvel movies, okay? This is for the old guys only. So yeah, some people are like, yeah, but what's the trick? There's no trick. This is difficult. This is hard. We have a saying in Spanish where we say this, that change management is like matar un burro a pellizcos, which is like trying to kill a donkey by pinching it, okay? You pinch the donkey, and you pinch the donkey, and you pinch the donkey. Eventually, 5 years in the process, the donkey dies, and everyone is like, oh, change happened overnight, and you're like, I want to kill someone, okay? Yeah, no really Jedi mind tricks to persuade people and convince them of doing agility. I'm so sorry. Let's make this disclaimer. And then let's go into the first story, because again, I'm short on time. Meet Ignaz Semmelweis. I hope I pronounced that right. This guy was a surgeon, a physician in Austria in the 19th century, and he realized something really strange. He realized that at the time, a lot of children were dying at childbirth, okay? Like 18%, 20% of the children were dying at childbirth. This is massive. This is 1 out of every 5 children being born. They were dying afterwards really, really young, like in the first days. And everyone was like, yeah, it's always been like that, so deal with it. But then he realized that in one specific maternity ward in the hospital, the dying of infants and mothers was significantly lower. And the only difference was that in this maternity ward, there were midwives attending the childbirths instead of surgeons and doctors and students. So he figured that something was different here and he couldn't realize. So he started studying and trying to realize what was being done different, but the procedures were the same. The midwives were doing exactly the same things that the doctors and the students were doing in other maternity wards. Yet, the mortality rate was significantly lower, 10 times lower. And then he realized that there was one difference. The surgeons and the students, before going into the maternity ward and attending the mothers that were giving birth, they were practicing and studying with corpses. So he thought, maybe there's something in the corpses that is being carried to the maternity wards and it's infecting this kind of the children and the mothers. So he introduces the practice of washing the hands of the doctors and the students before they were attending the mothers at childbirth. And surprise, surprise, the results were impressive. He brought down mortality rate from 18% to 2%. And then everyone was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And the practice was immediately adopted by everyone, everywhere. Yeah, sure, as if. You guess what happened? Nobody cared. In fact, doctors hated him. He said, but this is not efficient. Now I have to spend time washing my hands instead of attending more mothers and giving birth to more children. And you were like, yeah, but they are dying. And you're like, no, you don't understand. If I stop to wash my hands, I'm not meeting my quarterly OKRs. I make KPIs. Because I'm doing something that I'm not rewarded to do. I have a bonus at the end of the year that depends on how many children I give birth to. I don't care if they die afterwards. I have to be more efficient. Does it ring a bell? Does it sound familiar to you? Funny because it's true? Okay, and also Ignaz Semmelweis wasn't very knowledgeable about the change management process, and he what he did was he antagonized the doctors, calling them child murderers, making friends. Okay, it's a great way of changing people, insulting them and making them responsible. You are the one responsible for this. You are doing it wrong. Everything is wrong. I am here to fix everything. That was me in my first half of my career. I was the smart guy. I've been hired to do what you poor, pitiful people have not been able to do. Surprisingly enough, I was hated too. And I couldn't understand it. I was like, but I'm showing you better ways of doing things. I'm saving children. And nobody cared. Eventually, Ignaz Semmelweis died in an asylum, which is what will happen to many of you if you don't understand that you are fighting the wrong fight and you're trying to convince people the wrong way, and then you will die alone and ignored in an asylum. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Don't kill the messenger. Okay? We've never done it like that. Yeah, that happens also many times. I go to companies and I say, hey, what about we structure the teams like this and this and this and this? And they say, but that's not how we are organized. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm suggesting we do something different. You brought me here to change things, okay? So, yeah, eventually after his death, Louis Pasteur introduced germ theory, and everyone started to realize that there was something that they didn't know. And then Lister, you don't know about Listerine? Listerine is named Listerine as an homage to Lister, who was the one who introduced the antiseptic practices in surgery and in hospitals. So eventually, long after Ignaz Semmelweis was gone, his ideas were introduced everywhere, and that's how we work today. So would you say that Ignaz Semmelweis was successful after all? Good question. Let's keep that question in mind. I love this quote by Max Planck, who says, "A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die." And a new generation grows up that is familiar with it, also known as science advances one funeral at a time, okay? So if you are thinking about that person in your organization that is against the transformation, maybe give him a push down the stairs and accelerate the transformation. Just saying. Might work. Eventually, today we have statues and coins and memorabilia about Semmelweis, so he's been recognized by his contribution. So I guess somehow he was successful, only he wasn't very happy about the way he made it. So my second story starts earlier in time. This is Anthony Bessenet. Anthony Bessenet was a French-born American abolitionist. He was against the idea of slavery. And at that time, this was pretty radical. This was pretty utopian. This was like, maybe even, against common sense. We're talking about 18th century, and this guy in Philadelphia, he opened one of the first schools for women, for girls in the United States, and he also brought education to black people, okay, in Philadelphia. When he died, his ideas were carried on by people as influential, as important as Benjamin Franklin, who was one of the founding fathers of the United States. Maybe you didn't know about this, but many of the founding fathers were slave owners, George Washington being one of them, notably. So, yeah, interesting. Before the United States were even founded, Anthony Bessenet was pushing these ideas. But his ideas and his success and his influence was local. He did like these local schools in Philadelphia, and he influenced some people like Benjamin Franklin that later on time would maybe start doing other things. Anyway, my second story is not about Anthony Bessenet, it's about Thomas Clarkson. Thomas Clarkson was also a Quaker, as well as Anthony Bessenet, and when he was 25, he entered a contest to write an essay in Leiden, and the topic of the essay was, is it moral to have slaves for a Christian, for a Quaker? So he started researching, and he found the works of Anthony Bessenet, and he was absolutely astonished. Some sense of calling awakened inside of him, as we may have experienced in our first Agile conference when we said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, okay? So maybe you can connect with that. We are standing in the shoulder of giants, like Anthony Bessenet, and he decided that he was going to devote his whole life to end slavery. In the United Kingdom, in Great Britain, where slavery was one of the most important industries. So it's like, you're crazy, you're never gonna make any kind of change. So he started talking to people. He started going to the harbors where the slave boats were, taking provisions, were working. And he was almost murdered a couple of times because the people that were trading with slaves saw him as a threat. Okay. At some point, like 2 or 3 years into the process, he met William Wilberforce, who was a young member of the British Parliament. This, in change management theory, is what we call a corporate angel or a champion, somebody that has the means to influence the policymakers. And this is a very, very important moment in every change initiative. We stop being just some crazy prophets preaching in the desert, and suddenly we have some people that are also preaching and are also moving these ideas, but they are doing that in the managerial spheres, okay, in the CEOs' chambers and things like that. So 4 years later, they introduced the first proposal to the House of the Parliament to eradicate and to abolish slavery, and they lost, of course. 163 votes to 88. So, people don't understand, I'm surrounded by idiots, you don't get it. Usually what I do when I reach this point in a company is I go to another company. I am a consultant, I'm like, you don't get it. I go elsewhere, no? But some of us sometimes don't have that privilege. Some of us have to stay where we are and keep fighting for what we believe is true and worth. So they kept at it. They kept at it for several other years, 3, 4 years. 10 years into the process, Thomas Clarkson is absolutely exhausted. He has been going to every small community around the United Kingdom, showing people terrible statements and terrible tales about slavery. When I was preparing this talk, I was this close to bring some of the pictures, some of the drawings that he showed to people so they realized how slaves were packed into the boats, but it's too hard, even for me, that I've seen them several times. So I decided to spare that to you guys in the morning of this amazing day. But he was bringing slaves that have been emancipated. They brought them to tell people in the United Kingdom, this is how slavery looks like, and show the scars and show the torture, and people were crying. And this was a very, very powerful movement, but he was exhausted. For 10 years he had been doing that, so at some point he decided to retire, he got married, he went back to classes. But then 10 years later, many things happened, French Revolution, some other things, the war with Napoleon, and the ideas came back. And then somebody say, hey, how about we try to get rid of slavery? And then some people say, oh, we tried that already, it didn't work. Have you ever heard that? Again, that's a sign you don't understand how change happens in human organizations. Of course, we've tried before. We keep trying, okay? And eventually, he started again in the process, and in 1807, there was a first change, which was they forbid the trade of slaves, okay? And even the British Empire military started to patrol the seas and look for slavery ships and stop them because it was forbidden. And then later into the process, in 1833, slaves were emancipated way before they were in the United States. We always see the United States and the Civil War that was there, you know, Abraham Lincoln, the whole story. We see that as the poster of slaves' emancipation. But interestingly enough, the empire, the king and all of that, they emancipated slaves and they stopped slavery way before the United States. That's pretty amazing. Oh, but the king won't like it. That's also something I hear many times. Hey, how about we do, you know, self-organizing teams and empower them to work in small cycles? Yeah, the CEO is not going to like it. Of course the CEO is not going to like it. That's the whole thing. Imagine people going to Gandhi and saying, Mahatma, we have an idea. How about we become independent from the British Empire, from the Great Britain? And Gandhi saying, yeah, it sounds good in theory, but the king won't like it. Of course the king would like it. That's the whole game, okay? We have this idea that in order to have change in our organizations, the only thing that must happen is that the CEO has to be involved and the CEO has to be willing. Most of the times that's not the case, and most of top-down change initiatives fail over time. Because if you try to force people to do something and they do it only because it's mandated, only because you are exercising coercive power, the change will only last as long as you are exercising that power. Whereas when it's bottom up and people that participate creating a plan are less likely to be against the plan, okay? It's harder the other way, like top-down management, dark side, for all you Star Wars fans. Easier, faster, not more powerful. I was the only one that liked that joke. I'm the only nerd in this room. Of course, the king didn't like it. By the way, Thomas Clarkson also had his stages done in time. And there's also a movie, Amazing Grace, 2006, that tells this story about Thomas Clarkson and William Wilberforce. Maybe you would like to show it to your teams and then have some discussion about how change happened, even when that change means changing the world. And even when you have no real power, as Thomas Vessenet, Ignaz Semmelweis, or Thomas Clarkson have. They had no real power. They were not executives. They weren't the policymakers. Yet, they managed to change the world in less than 50 years. That's pretty amazing. And there are many, many lessons that we can learn from those processes. So what are those lessons? The main lesson, as I said before, is that there's a discipline called change management. And there's the study of how human organizations change, any human organization and any kind of change. If you want to introduce a new subject in the school where your children are, and you want to teach small children about emotional intelligence, and you introduce that idea, some small few people will say, it's an amazing idea. 85% of the people will say, nah, it won't work. No, we tried that before. No, that's not efficient. And then you will try to have to fight those ideas and convince those people over time. And the mechanics on how do you convince all those people are the same always. It's a repeatable process. It's not a mathematical process. You don't have like 100% chances that you will be successful, but your chances of being successful will, increase tenfold if you do it the right way, instead of doing things like Ignaz Semmelweis, insulting people and antagonizing. You don't care about your children. You're bad fathers. Yeah, way to go. Making friends. There is a repeatable process. You can read all these books. Of course, all these are very, very inspiring books. Even some of them, like Fearless Change by Marianne Lin and Linda Rising, they give you patterns, like small things that you can do, very, very practical patterns that you can repeat in your organizations. You can learn about those. You can practice those. But sometimes there are some learnings about change that I feel are not correctly or specifically, or they are not expressed in a very visible way in these works. And these are the 5 things I've brought, my 5 learnings about change management, my personal learnings, the 5 things I wish somebody told me 20 years ago, and my career would have been even more successful. So number 1, it takes time. It's not going to happen on a Monday. It's not going to happen January the 1st. This is not your typical SAP implementation. If you've ever been in an SAP project, when do we start using SAP? January the 1st. Okay, so we work for 5 years in a row, and on January the 1st, the night of the 31st of December, we shut down all the old systems, we power up SAP, nobody notices, right? You know how many times this has worked in the history of humankind? 0.0 times. But we still have this big bang change idea. Everything is going to change on a Monday morning on January the 1st. Okay? This is not going to work. This is not how change happens. Sometimes it takes 50 years. But when we're talking about changing the whole world, fortunately enough, hopefully, you don't have to change your whole world. You just have to change your company. It's way smaller. It's way easier. No? Change is a process. We sometimes see moments, inflection points. One morning, everyone woke up. I'm old enough to remember that day. And hey, in South Africa, the government gave equal rights to everyone in the population, end of apartheid. Now everyone has the same rights. Oh, that's amazing. South Africa changed overnight. And Nelson Mandela, who has been in prison for 40 years, says, overnight my ass. I've been tortured. Now you're saying that this has been an overnight success? Screw you guys. Okay, so there's no overnight change. A lot of things have happened before that. One day the CEO of your company wakes up and says, we have to be agile. And you're like, oh my God, he has been, he has an epiphany. He's being eliminated by God or something. No, a lot of things have happened before that you didn't saw, okay? There's a long story, and your CEO saying that now we are going to pursue agility or AI or whatever you're trying to introduce in your company is just another next step into the process, okay? It happens over and over and over, okay? There's no overnight success. Big bangs integrations, they are a myth. If you have been around the Agile community enough, maybe you remember an infamous paper by an infamous consultancy firm that you all know, okay, that I'm not going to mention, but it rhymes with Deloitte. And they said, we arrived at this bank on a Friday. And on Monday, everyone was a product owner and a scrum master and in an agile team. We did it over a weekend. Excuse my French, bullshit. Please find somebody who was in that bank. I know several people that went through this process, and they were like, okay, there was one day where they said, now we are changing all these positions. You're not a project manager anymore. Now you're a product owner. But as you probably know, it takes a little bit more like that to make an agile transformation, okay? If you just change the names, you just have a cosmetic change, okay? So there's no overnight success, there's no 24-hour change. This is a myth, it never works, okay? So let me give you a quote, because this is the opening keynote. I'm supposed to be inspiring as well as entertaining, and this is a quote by Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. He says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, okay? So focus on that single step. By the way, very recommended reading, Atomic Habits. I did by James Clear, I think. And he brought me back to this idea of if you want to start running, don't focus on a half marathon. Just focus on 3 times a week, putting on your shoes. That's it. And then staying home. But then the next week, maybe put your shoes and go for a walk around the building. And then the next week, go for a walk around 2 blocks. Okay? And then make it gradual and over time. It takes more time. Your chances of being successful are way better, are exponentially better. Second thing I learned, change is an emotional beast. This is not a rational thing. You are not going to convince people with facts. Let me say that again. You don't convince people with facts. Have you ever seen anyone, you know that everywhere around the world in cigarette boxes, they have these nasty pictures of, gore, okay? Have you ever seen someone speaking to you, pulling out their cigarette box and saying, no, and then, and then I'm going to, holy shit, this kills? I didn't know, I quit. Has that ever happened to you? No, it doesn't. Because facts are not enough. We all know that cigarettes are bad. But this is not about facts. If we were convinced by facts, everyone in this room would be eating 5 to 7 pieces of vegetables and fruits every day and working out 3 to 4 hours of, medium-level cardiovascular exercise a week, because science shows beyond any doubt that this is a way to live more years, be healthier, be happier. And are we doing it? No. Why? Because we don't have time. It's a great excuse, okay? So it's an emotional beast. People change because of emotional reasons. We are not as rational as we think. There's a book that I also recommend, Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, where he says that human beings, we are not rational, we are irrational, we're emotional. We take decisions mostly on emotions, and then we explain those decisions. No, it's because this and this and this, and we create the rationale of the action after we have taken that decision, after we have taken that action, okay? So one thing we also need to know about this idea of change being an emotional beast is your own emotions as a change agent. For instance, for a long time, for decades, I was stuck in what psychology calls the attribution mistake. The attribution mistake has a very long and complicated explanation, but in order to make it simple, one day you wake up, you look to your left, you look to your right, and you think, I'm surrounded by idiots. And it's an amazing explanation because it explains everything, of course. That's the reason everything is so broken. It's because I'm surrounded by idiots. It makes sense, okay? Your brain loves this kind of explanations because they explain everything. So you move, you go to another company, you quit, you go to another company, and you arrive, and you're so happy. And 2 years later, surprise, surprise, you're surrounded by idiots again. How come? Maybe I am the idiot, okay? And it was the case, okay? The problem was that I thought that by showing them Scrum, they would say, oh, brilliant, that's a way better way of doing things, and they will adopt it immediately. I was Ignaz Semmelweis. So don't antagonize people, don't try to only provide facts. Of course, you will eventually need some facts, but you have to understand that you have to empathize and connect and inspire those people. As Gandhi used to say, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. It takes time, and there's an emotional process that you need to follow. You can't skip phases. You can't go directly to the win. That's what we all want. But Angel, how long is it going to take? I need a roadmap for the change with deliverables, some milestones. It doesn't work that way. We are not building something. We are not building a bridge. We are changing a complex system of people. Okay. Anyhow, learning number 3, and I'm still on my time. That's good. I'm happy. This is the first time I'm doing this particular set of slides, by the way. It starts small and in the margins. Many times people come to my trainings, okay? And they say, Angel, I agree with everything you're saying, but, you know, the but is the delete key of the language, okay? I'm not a racist, but, oh my God, you don't want to hear what's coming. It's like, get out of the room, okay? I agree, but, which means you don't really agree. I agree, but the one that should be here is my boss. He is the one that needs to be convinced. And I'm like, yeah, but you are the one that's here today, so you listen, okay? And if you want to bring your boss tomorrow, fantastic. I make a living out of that, okay? So it's a good thing that you bring more people. But people think that the change will happen because we bring the prime minister and the king to the training. That's way into the future. Now, you are the one here, and even though you have no power, no title, no means, you have everything you need to start a movement in your company, which is your brain and your mouth. You can start having uncomfortable conversations, okay? You can start talking to people about things that maybe are considered today radical or taboo. There's something called the Overton window that says that you can only make policies about something when the conversation is already in the political arena. Like if you introduce the idea of giving women the right to vote, crazy idea, right? Who would want that? If you tried that was a joke, by the way, nobody laughed. In case you were wondering, that was sarcasm. I will put my sign, sarcasm. If you tried that in the 12th century, people will burn you in the stake. It's like, this guy is crazy. You know, giving women the right to vote and participate in politics, you are absolutely crazy. You wouldn't go far. But at some moment, suffragists and other people starting to have very, very radical conversations, and over time, they became political conversations. And in that moment, you can change policy. But you can't change policy when an idea is considered radical or taboo or extreme. So maybe your job is not to change the policy. Maybe your job is to start moving that Overton window and get these radical ideas until they become political ideas, things that are controversial, that maybe we can give them a try. And that's a huge contribution. That's what Anthony Vesnet did. That's what Ignaz Semmelweis did. And this is very important, and it's needed. So it starts small. It starts in the margins. People are like, oh, we don't have the power. We are not enough people. I truly live by the words of Margaret Mead, who was a someone American anthropologist, and said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Think about it. Every single time you see a worldwide change, you can trace that back to some people with that actual power who started throwing around crazy ideas. And maybe they have 12 people that started saying, yeah, that's a great idea. And then the government came and crucified one of them and burned another one. And then they threw another one of them on the lions. And then they say, well, we're done. And suddenly there were hundreds of them. And you go, what? And they kept doing that for 300 years. And at some point they were like, we surrender. Let's all give up. You win. And last, you win. And you start with a small group of people that have not actual power and are not a representative of the governments and all that. It's the only thing that had actually changed the world. The emancipation of slaves in the United Kingdom started with one Quaker, and in the United States, it started with one person that's opened a school, and with the people operating the Underground Railway, this organization of people that were trying to bring slaves to Canada where they could be free. And they were farmers, and they were, regular people, and they were risking their lives. They were risking imprisonment. They were risking being killed by the slave owners. And those were the people that started the movement and ultimately changed the world. This could be you, by the way. Okay. Learning number 4. Your job is maybe not to, and I lost my monitor here. Your job is not to maybe implement self-organizing teams and install Jira and put the user stories in the board. I've been there. Maybe some of you know me from my ancient times. I had a talk that was very popular when I introduced one idea. My grand contribution to agility is the Scrum Mom, okay? This idea of the Scrum Master that acts like a mother for the team. I will cook you breakfast. I will iron your shirts. I will put the stories on the board. I will gather the people and do the daily meetings. I will update Jira. And you're acting like a butler or a mother or a father for the team. And at the beginning, that's very nice because the team sees some value on that, and you also seem like you are contributing. It's not enough because your job is not to make agility happen and to make agility work. Your job as a change agent, when we are still trying to introduce a transformation and a change in a company, is to create more leaders, to involve more people. When I talk to people and I draw this diagram and I put the early adopters and I put the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards, the people that are fighting the change with an emotional, fear-based energy. And I ask people in my seminars, in my workshops, if you could only work with one of these groups, which one would be the one you choose? Some people say the laggards. Let's convince the laggards. Some people say the early majority because they are the ones that are willing to change but haven't changed first. But my answer is the one group you have to rely on is the early adopters. Nobody choose that. Nobody choose them because they are already convinced. So we forget about them instead of nurturing them, instead of making them the heroes of the story, instead of giving them the means to continue the conversation and make the changes. So care about this small fellowship of the ring. That's all you need. Maybe you only need 3 hobbits, 1 dwarf, 1 elf, 2 humans. Okay? So this is closer to your generation than Star Wars. Okay, let's make it. The freakometer. Tink. So maybe don't try to change 60,000 people at the same time. The biggest project I was involved was Bancolombia. It was a Colombian bank. They operate in 5 countries. In the first year, we moved 3,000 people to work in different ways, in agile ways. And this whole 1.5-year project was done with one external consultant, which was me. The rest was local people, people from the organization that were champions, people that were dedicated to the change. 40 people inside the organization were moving all these teams forward. And eventually, we went to 5 countries over the next 2 and 3 years, and we moved beyond the technical area, and we started doing new ways of working and introducing Agile, Lean, and many other techniques and practices in audit, in purchasing, in finance, in market, in corporate banking, in all the parts of the company. And at that point, there were 3 external consultants. I was one of them, and I brought 2 of my friends because I couldn't be in 3 countries at the same time. That's something I'm still struggling with. Okay, but if I had thought at the beginning of the process, oh my God, I have to change 60,000 people, I would have given up. But I focused on these 40 people, and these 40 people, each of them started working with 10 or 20 people. Suddenly there's 800 people inside the process in 6 months. And that's huge. You know how loud 800 people can be in your organization? You can't stop that, okay, if you have the proper momentum and the proper inertia, okay? So, another quote. Peopleware, another recommended book by Tom DeMarco, Timothy Lister, who were giants whose shoulders we stand in, okay? And they have this story, the story of Holger Dansk. Holger Dansk is a myth. It's a giant that sleeps below the mountains of Denmark, and the legend says that if Denmark anytime it's under danger of invasion or destruction, the giant will awake and will defend the country. And they say, your job is not to defend Denmark, your job is to awake the giant. And that giant is the collective force of everyone in your organization pursuing one vision. And if that's happening, not even the King of England can stop that, okay? Especially the one they have now. Where's my British friends? Mr. Sausage Fingers. What's happening with the hands of the leaders these days? We have a president with small hands. We have a king with sausage fingers. Something's going on. Anyway, I'm losing my train of thought. So my final learning, and I'm wrapping this up because I have 2 minutes, is to not try to sell the change itself. One of the mistakes we've made as a community is to sell agility. Hey, let's do squads, let's do chapters, let's do guilds, because Spotify is doing it. It's not enough. People won't resonate with that. We are trying to change the change. Try to think about this. How many adult people in a first world country are willing to go on a diet? When I ask this, people go 40%, 80%, everyone. Nobody, 0% of the people are willing to go on a diet. Nobody wants to do that. I live on a diet. It sucks, okay? It sucks. Every single day I have to choose between eating a donut, which looks delicious, or eating spinach, which looks like a cow has been chewing on grass and spit them on my plate. And I choose the spinach, and I'm like, this is what I choose. But I don't want to do that. What I want is to look better and to be happier and healthier and live more years. And that's what you have to sell. Don't sell the spinach. That's too hard. Sell the image, sell the dream, sell you are going to gain confidence, you're going to be healthier, you're going to live longer, you're going to have less strain on your hips and your knees. And that's the one thing. And we failed many times, not you guys because you are amazing, but many other people that didn't come today, they failed at selling the benefits of the transformation, faster projects, happier customer, more motivation, retention, innovation. Instead of that, we're trying to sell squads. Stop selling squads, please. Okay, you know that's wrong, never happened. And this is where creating a clear and inspiring vision experiment. Okay, my last quote for you is from the great late Leonard Cohen in the song Anthem. He says, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Find the cracks in your organization. This is a picture of me with Tobias Meyer and Alan Seaman, who were two certified Scrum trainers. This is 2014 in Agile Latin America, the Latin American conference. Tobias Meyer was presenting his book, Popular Scrum, and that's the reason of this picture. And Alan Seaman, he introduced the idea of organic Scrum. He says, when I start working with a team, I don't introduce like product owners, Scrum Masters, daily meetings. The only thing I do is regular retrospectives. Every once in a while, we meet together and we say, hey, what's working, what's not working? And then I try to help with that. And then teams will maybe say, well, the problem we're having is that we are receiving inputs from everywhere. We have ticketing systems, and we have emails, and we have phones. And he's like, oh, well, that's too bad. Hey, how about this? How we try this for a month or two. Let's tell everyone to give me their requests, and I will try to order them in a priority way, and I will give them one by one based on a global priority, so you can focus on one thing and be more concentrated. And they, well, let's try that. And a month later, he says, how is it going? And they go, oh, it's way better. So what am I doing? I'm introducing the product owner pattern without saying, this is what Jeff Sutherland says. Jeff who? Shut up. These are sacred words. Heresy. Okay. Instead of that, I'm introducing a solution to your problems because I'm finding a crack in the system, and that's how the light gets in. Find the cracks in your system. I'm out of time because you guys were out of time in your introduction. Not my fault, okay? So for 2 minutes, this presentation will be shared with you. I only have 2 more slides saying, okay, it's not about being in power, being right, having all the facts. It's more about connecting with people, inspiring people, making them see a brighter future. There's a repeatable process that you can learn in the books and in the tutorials and everywhere. You don't need me for that. If you want to have a plan, your plan will be, let's try to announce your change initiative, your transformation, not in the means of this is what we are going to do, but in the sense of these are the problems we need to solve, and this is the benefits, and this is the way, and this is why we are doing this, an inspiring way. And then create dedicated teams. A dedicated team is not a committee. Some people say, oh, we have a change team, and the change team is meeting every 2 Fridays for an hour. That's not a team, that's a committee. Okay, that's another meeting, another bloody meeting. Exactly what we needed, more meetings. Instead of that, trust a group of inspired and committed individuals, give them the means to do their work, to open and comfortable conversation, put your money where your words are, try that for a time, and then you come to me and tell me it's not working. My last quote, I'm almost out of quotes, is from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the writer of The Little Prince, who said, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. Thank you very much. There's no Agile transformation without leadership transformation.
Great, great. Thank you, Angel. You were really amazing. Thank you.